Welcome to Class 5, where in this shot I will be rotating hard surface objects using silhouettes and internal tracking to help me out. Cast the shot through. So here I have an aerial shot of New York City, and right in the center is the Empire State Building. It was shot from a helicopter, and there's a lot of jitter in the plate. So I need to roto the Empire State Building here before any stabilization happens down the line. So I'm going to use tracking to help me out. So as you can see, it would be just almost impossible to manually roto this shot with all the jitter. So let me stop here. So but before we start, I'm going to talk a little bit about tracking, and I'm guessing many of you are already familiar with it, but maybe this will help in terms how things work inside of Silhouette. So while I'm mostly going to be doing planar tracking in this shot, I'm going to do a quick demo of point tracking. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here, and I'm just going to alter my image a little bit in the viewer so I can see it a little bit better. Okay, first I'm going to track the top face of this building using the point tracker. I'll click on the tracker icon over here. We're in the point tracker here, and I'm going to corner pin it. I'm going to go to the first frame. I'm going to place down my points. I'm going to hold down the Alt key. And if you hold down the Alt key where my cursor is, you can see where I'm placing my point. I'm going to put this point there and this one here. Okay, and I'm going to do a little image processing. So I'm going to turn on the preview. And just going to up the contrast a bit. So I think that'll help me. Turn off the preview. I'm going to select all 4 trackers at once over here in the object list, and I'm going to track it through. Okay, you can see that there was a problem with one of the trackers, and I'm just going to go back and I'm going to retrack that section. So I'm going to go to the timeline. I'm going to pull this up here. You can see I have the colored timeline tracks preference chosen because the tracking, the color in the timeline here is the same color as the little color pot over here on the right in the object list. Okay, so let's go find that tracker. Looks like it is tracker 2. Okay, so we're going to go find tracker 2. I'm going to focus in around here. We'll go back. Okay. So around the last good frame is around here. I'm going to select that frame in the timeline, shift select. You can see it's highlighted. Actually, I want to be on tracker 2. Let's go down here, tracker 2. And we're going to just delete that. And now we're just going to track it again. And that worked out just fine. I find that I have really good luck just retracking from where the last good frame was, and I don't have to start over. Okay, so now I want to apply all of my trackers to a layer. So I'm going to create a layer. I'm going to call this top building face. Okay, I'm going to select my trackers, shift select, then I'm also going to select the layer, and now I'm going to click apply, and now you can say corner pin tracking as applied to active layer. So now you can see, well, let's put a shape in there and check it out. Sometimes I do like to view the layer in the stabilization mode up here, but sometimes I find it fast if I just drop in a shape real quick. So I'm going to click on the layer. I'm going to choose the square shape, which is Shift S. And now you can see I have that tool highlighted. I'm going to make my shape. I'm on the last frame, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, there's my shape, and I'm going to play it through. Okay, so that worked out pretty well. I might just have to make a little keyframe adjustment here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm just going to pull this one down. Okay, you can zoom out, play it through. Okay, so that's pretty good. You can look also in the color comp by choosing 4 on the top of your keyboard. And then you can see I have my shape like that. Okay, so that, and then I can go back to output, or I can just click 1. So now you can see that's a way to do a 4-point tracking and apply it to a layer. And of course, you're wondering, well, can I export this information? And you can. So if I'm in the tracker tab, you can see that if I select my trackers here, there's the export, well, it's import and export for point tracking. And there's a lot of different programs you can export to and import from. So you just want to go, the best way to do it, to find out how to do it, is to look at the user guide. So I'm going to bring that up. I'm going to search for export tracking. Okay, because it's a little bit different for different programs. So now you can see here, I'm going to switch to the mouse and scroll down. Import and exporting tracking data for the different programs for 1 or 2 point trackers, for 4 trackers, or corner pinning, layers, and importing as well. So this is just a good resource when you're wanting to import or export tracking. Okay, I'll close that. Okay, next we're going to do 2-point tracking. So I'm going to go to the first frame here, and I'm going to isolate, or I'm going to make a shape where I can isolate these top row windows. So I'm going to put in a point tracker, click the Alt key. I see my window there, and then I see my other window here. I'm going to check on the preview. Probably don't maybe need as much contrast. Bring that down a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to shift to select my trackers and track that through. So once again, there's a little bit of a bobble. We'll just go back to the timeline here, and we will select which one that was as tracker 5. I'll go to the last good frame. Actually, what we'll probably go back to the beginning. So I'm in tracker 5. I'm going to focus. Clicking there will bring me to center in my timeline. And I'm going to choose all the frames back to the beginning. Delete those. And then I'm going to track it back. And there's no problem there. So then I have my 2 trackers here. So I can apply this to a layer. I'm going to create a layer. I'm going to call this window isolation. Okay, I'm going to shift click my trackers, and I'm going to end my layer, and I'm going to apply it. So when you have 2 or more trackers, you have the option of scaling and rotation. I have those both checked. You can uncheck them, but I have them checked for this circumstance. So click OK, and now I'm going to drop a shape inside. Shift S for square tool. We'll quickly make a shape, and then we'll see how it plays through. Okay, so it's pretty good, but you can see for a shot like this, planar tracking is probably going to help you a lot more, because there's just so much jitter that it's a little bit more difficult for any point tracker. Okay, next we're going to do one more thing with the point tracker. For this shot, later on, I might need to auto paint out some of these single objects on tops of the roof here. We have some satellite dishes, maybe some vent covers, not quite sure. So I'm going to try to place my points down and do all my tracking at once. So I'm going to go to the Shift T for the tracker. I'm in the point tracker here, and I'm going to click the Alt key, and I'm going to add my points. Okay, so I have a bunch of shapes, or sorry, a bunch of points here. I'm going to select them all. I'm going to zoom out. And I'm just going to track them. Okay, so you can see that worked out pretty well. It's much quicker just to do all that tracking at once. So, yeah, but as I said before, because of there's so much high frequency jitter in this plate, it's kind of problematic, and I would only use point tracking for small objects that I needed to use when I'm doing my auto paint later, if I needed to auto paint out some of these. Okay. Another thing I'm going to show you here is smoothing your tracking. So I'm going to zoom in right here, and you can smooth a point or a layer. So we're going to start with a point here. And I'm going to find, here we are. Okay. So if you're going to do some smoothing to get rid of some tracking inconsistencies or just to make the movement smoother, this is how you do it. I'm going to turn on the vectors. So now you can see it's kind of erratic. I'll turn off that. So you can zoom in here, and it's a lot of, it's not smooth at all. So I'm going to show you how to do that. But smoothing is an undoable action later on. So if you are going to do it, it's a good idea to make a copy of your tracker. So I'll just select this tracker here and Command D, and that's going to duplicate it. And I'll just call this tracker 6 smooth. Okay, and now I'm going to change the color. So I'm going to change the color of my original tracker to, so you can see it a little bit better, to red. And then I'll change my smooth tracker color to yellow. Okay, now we're going to smooth the tracker 6 smooth tracker. So it's selected. I'm going to click the smooth button right here, and I'm going to drag the slider. And now you can see in here that, I'll just zoom in a little bit more, that the yellow is now much smoother than the red original tracker. Okay, so we'll zoom out. And you can also do the same operation to a layer as well. And you would want to maybe duplicate that layer in case you wanted to go back at some time, because maybe if you did too much smoothing, then that might not be what you want. Okay, so now let's move on to some planar tracking. I'm going to zoom out here, and I'm going to actually delete everything in here so far because we're not going to use it. Delete that, and we are going to do some planar tracking. So we've done a lot of Mocha planar tracking earlier in an earlier class, so I'm going to use the Silhouette planar tracker for the Empire State Building. So first we're going to do, I'm going to track the front face, and you can track multiple surfaces at once. It's called group tracking. So I'm going to make a couple layers here. I'm going to call this top building face. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to go to the first frame, and I'm going to make my tracking shape. I'm taking care not to place it in the middle of a section like that doesn't have much detail, because I sometimes find that the line jumps around a little bit. So I'm trying to place it where there's a little more information for the tracker to follow. Okay, so there's that shape. And I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call this lower building face. I'm going to zoom out. Okay, I'm going to make my tracking shape here. So you just have to make sure that your shapes do not overlap. And you want to make sure that you're tracking tracking objects that would need similar tracking parameters. Okay, let's give that a try. I don't want to go too far down here because it might confuse this plane with that plane. Okay, so now I'm going to shift select. Actually, first I'm going to go to the tracking parameters. I'm going to click on the planar tracker here. So there's several different parameters you can set here, and You may have experience with this already, but there are 4 choices for the tracking features, and there are 3 choices for the motion model. And I find for like a shot like this, I'm going to keep it on perspective for some of my large areas, and then my tracking feature kind of varies. Sometimes you can see I have like 900 valid tracks with the auto, and if we go to corners, there's 700 something, edges, it's a lot as well, and ridges. But I'm going to stick with auto, and let's track it through. I'm going to zoom out. I'm also going to look at my preview real quick. We're just going to turn off points and see maybe a tiny bit more. Okay, turn off the preview. I can turn on my points, and then we'll just track it through. Oh, first I want to make sure that I'm on, because I have a lot going on here. The view, we're going to put that in the foreground because there'll be less processing. Okay, let's track it. Yeah, there's no silver bullet for a shot like this. You have a jittery camera movement, and you have these unique building features up here. So it's not going to be a one-stop shop. You have to try different methods, and you might have to break up your object into several different shapes and planes. Okay, we're almost done. Okay, so let's give that a try. I could look at it in stabilize mode, but instead I'm just going to drop in a couple shapes. Shift S for square shape. I'm going to turn off my tracking shapes, and I'm going to make my roto shapes. So I also want to mention here, while I'm drawing a square shape here, you can set your spline type in the preferences. It's called the primitive type. So I'll just check that out real quick. We'll go to silhouette preferences. So I'm here in the shape area. So it's down here, primitive type B-spline. You can have Bezier, B-spline, or X-spline. Mine's set to B-spline. So when I choose the square or the circle shape, it's going to be that spline type. All right. Almost making my tracking shape again. And we'll just pull that out. That's the lower. Whoops, see, I messed. That has to be in the top. No problem. I'll just drag that shape into there. Then we're going to be the lower building. Shift S. Okay, we'll play that through to see how that looks. So it's pretty good. I might need to make a few keyframes here and there. Okay, so that is one example of group tracking, and now we can try the top of this tower as well. So yes, okay, here we go. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to make my shape here. So I'm going to break up this top tower into 2 parts, the right side and the left side. So I'm going to call this layer top tower right. And then I'm going to make another layer. I'm going to call this top tower left. Okay. And I make my shape for that layer. And they're not overlapping. Okay, let's check out the tracking parameters here. Let's see what we get. So edges, ridges. Okay, I think we're going to go with auto again because I have the most valid tracks. And we'll track that through. And you may or may not be able to hear the fan going on in my computer. It's a pretty intensive tracking here. And even though I can see this shape is not adhering to this edge, what I'm really looking for is a consistent movement, because there's no way to really accurately roto the jitter in this shot. You would have keyframes on every single frame, and it still wouldn't be correct. Okay, so let's drop a shape in. I'm going to start with tower right here. First, I'm going to turn off vectors, and I'm going to turn off my tracking shapes. Okay, let's zoom in. I'm going to see. I'm actually going to make my shape out here. And I will need many shapes for this top tower. There's some detail out here that's going to have to be separate. Right now, I'm just quickly trying to see, is it going to work? Oh, you know what I did? I just made this in the top tower left. Okay, so that happens a lot with me. So I'm going to drag this shape into the top tower right. That does seem to follow a little bit better. And maybe I don't need that last keyframe here. I'm just going to delete that. Make sure when you delete items that you're inside the timeline and you're not inside the object list window. So delete, and that keyframe's gone, and that's fine. Okay. And now I think I can probably move my shape out a little bit more. So I can use the multi-frame key, click M, and I have a border around my image, and then I can just nudge this over. I want all my points to actually be there. Click the M key again. Okay, so now I have a shape, this pipe off the edge. There's all sorts of things off the top of this tower, but they all need to be rotoed. So top tower right, I'm going to click B to make an open shape. I'm going to put down 3 points. I'm going to hit the R key. So now I'm in the editing mode. And I'm also going to make some shapes for these little struts here. So I'm going to hit the B key again. 1, 2, 3, hit R for reshape, get in the reshape mode. So the reason why you do not automatically get put into the reshape mode after you finish your open shape is because Silhouette doesn't know that you've actually completed this shape, because you could keep making points for your open shape. But when you make a closed shape, you obviously see the circle and you close it, and that's how it knows it's closed and ready to be edited. And I'm not going to assign a width to my open shapes yet, because I want to do the articulation first, because I can see it a little bit better if I don't have the width assigned. Okay, so let's see how this plays through. So it's following, and I'm just going to make a couple keyframes here. Oh, here we go again. See, somehow I was not selected on my layer, and I'm going to go back. It's not a problem. I'm just going to drag all these into top tower right. So that means what's problematic there, and then this is a good example to show you that If you make your shape inside the wrong layer that has transform data applied to it, let's go back. It has to be possibly moved over a little bit more. So here in this case, I might need to move it over just a little bit. Okay, so top tower right, and now we're going to go through just quickly, do some keyframing. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do. And now I'm going to assign the width. So for this one vertical piece, I'm going to go down here into the object parameters window. I'm going to get that a width of 3. And I'm going to choose the cap style as round. Maybe it's more like a pipe instead of just a flat piece of metal. So then I can choose my horizontal support pieces. I'm going to give that a width of 1. And I'm just going to leave that cap style as flat. All right, so then I'm going to turn on the alpha. We'll go to output. And we'll just kind of play this through. So you can see here that it's following pretty well. Okay. So now I'm going to show you my final roto, and I'm going to go through some of those layers in there. I'm going to turn off the alpha overlay. I'm going to go to my final session here. And you can see here I'll bring that down a little bit. And I'll bring up my object list. That if I shift click everything in here, you can see everything that's here. We have the top of the tower, the top, the lower left, lowest left platform. There are so many layers in here and so many different tracking shapes as well, because there was no way to put this all in like very few layers. They all needed their own separate tracking, and we'll just turn off. We'll go back to just looking at this. So another reason why I liked using the planar tracker on this shot, with the silhouette planar tracker, I'm going to brighten this up a little bit. Because for some of these areas here, tracking this, it was the trackers, the points really grabbed onto some of this detail here, and that was really helpful because it's not really one plane, it's like several planes, but I was able to use one track and make all these shapes. So I'll go in and I'll find that. So here, lower left tower, I'm going to turn on my tracking shape here. I'll make that a different color. How about I'll make that red. So this is the area I tracked, and so if I go over to the tracker, I'm in the planar tracker, I turn on my points. Well, actually, that's not, I have too many shapes selected right now. But in any case, I was able to make a lot of different, or have a tracking setting where it just matched perfectly. I had very few keyframes, as you can see inside of this lower left tower. So here, there's not very many at all. I'll turn on the overlay. So it followed pretty well. And even up at the top, when I have my towers here, upper top, so we have the top, and I have a lot of these little shapes in here. And that worked out really well. The open shapes are really helpful for all these metal things that stick off the side. These are all open shapes. It's really handy. Okay. And then we'll just turn off the overlay. Okay, the last thing I'm going to show you in this class is an alternate way to roto this shot. I'm going to go to a different session called jitter stabilization. So it's a little bit of a process, but if you're finding that you're just still getting a lot of jitter with your tracking, which I kind of still was at certain points, you can do a couple layer stabilization, and then you can track on top of that to make your roto. So it's a little bit of pre-stabilization, but I'm not baking that into the plate. So I'm going to talk you through this, and it's a little bit of a process, and I have all these notes here. So let's start. Okay, so here we have our a layer called smooth layer, and it has read first. I've put in notes. You can see here on the right that the icon for the notes is shaded, and that means that there is some important information in there. So it's kind of a step-by-step. And so along with this course, I'm providing completed silhouette projects. So if you want to try this method, you can find this project and you can go through this session, the jitter stabilization session, and look at these notes here. Okay, so the first thing I did is I tracked the shot with two trackers, tracker 1 and tracker 2. And I'll turn that on and see if we can find them. Okay, turn on our tool overlay. So you can see here I have tracker 1 and tracker 2. So I track the image and then I smooth the trackers, and I showed you how to do that earlier. So I named them tracker 1 left smooth and tracker 2 right smooth. So then I selected these and I applied these trackers to a layer, and I called that smooth layer. So inside here, well, it's not inside. So this smooth layer has this tracking information applied to it because the trackers typically lie outside of the layers. So let's click on our notes again. Okay. So then I stabilize the viewer based on the smooth layer. So if I do that, you go to Roto, smooth layer, and if you play this through, basically you're looking, let me turn off the vectors here. You're looking at the jitter in the shot because I've tracked the jitter basically. And I've done a little smoothing on top of it. Okay, so then after I do that, while I'm in this smooth layer stabilization view, I'm going to create two new trackers inside of this layer. So I've created two new trackers, tracker 3 and tracker 4, left and right. I'm just tracking the same area that I tracked before. So I tracked those two, and then I also, applied those two trackers inside the smooth layer with that information into a new layer called the jitter stab layer. And when I did that, you only want to choose position only. And so after I do that, we'll go to this layer here. Read second. So like I said, after applying tracker 3 and 4 to the jitter stab layer using position only, stabilize the viewer on the jitter stab layer. So if we go up to the view here, and now we're looking at the jitter stab layer, the jitter is basically stabilized. It's playing through, it's a little hard to tell now, but it's not as jittery as before. So then if I want to roto, I need to actually do some tracking to make my roto. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call this Empire State Building, because now I'm going to actually start rotoing my shot. And I'll read, so it says read third. We'll click on that. So yeah, so you view the jitter stab layer in the stabilized view, and we're already there. Just check again. Okay, and then make the new layer called Empire State Building, and we track the building, then we make a shape. So let's just, I can zoom in here and I can show you what I did. I made my planar, my tracking shape green, and I tracked that on top. I'm in the stabilized view, the jitter stab view. Then after I did that tracking, you can see here in the timeline here, then I made my shape inside, and I called it top building. And I'm going to turn off my tracking shape, and now you can see that my shape tracks nicely to the building. It's, looks kind of stabilized. It's nice. However, we need to make sure that my shape is actually going to work with the unstabilized plate. So we're going to go up here. We're going to choose none. And we're going to play that through, and you can see that it is now tracking to the original jittery plate. And just for a little sanity check, we can go over here, and I'm going to pull in another source here. And I'm going to go to my roto window here, and I'm just going to copy paste this tracking and this layer into a new roto node. So first I'm going to click on that. I'm going to right click, Silhouette Roto. I have my new roto node here. I'm going to click on that, shift click, copy, go to my new roto node, paste. Okay, I'll turn off the alpha overlay. And now we'll turn off, go to the, so it's kind of a double check. You know, I have a brand new source, I've copy pasted roto, and now I know that it's kind of it's another method to use if you just can't quite get really solid tracking on a super jittery plates.